Hafide and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for the final call ceremony for Fire Chief Felix Sablan. My name is Chirag Bojwani, and I'll be your MC for today. Joining us today, we have the Honorable Governor Lourdes Leon Guerrero, the Honorable Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio, former Governor, the Honorable Carl T.C. Gutierrez, the Honorable Speaker Therese Terlahi, the Honorable Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muña Barnes, the Honorable Senator Jose Pito Terlahi. Joining us today as well is the multiple fire departments on island, starting with the Guam Fire Department, Chief Stone. From Navy Fire, Chief Lawrence Griffin. From the Airport Fire Department, Chief Montanonia. As well as representatives from our Anderson Fire Department. At this point, if I can ask everybody to please rise as we begin the proceedings for the final call for Fire Chief Felix Sablan. And at this point, I'd like to call up Joint Region Fire Emergency Services to begin today's procession.
Fire Chief Felix Sablan, dispatch. Fire Chief Felix Sablan, dispatch. We know that Chief Sablan has responded to his last call on Earth, and that the fire department in the hereafter has a new responder. Chief Sablan served the citizens of Naval Base Guam Fire Emergency Services and the Guam Fire Department. Chief host. Nine.
Throughout most of history, the life of a firefighter has been closely associated with ringing of a bell. As his day began his tour of duty, it was the bell that started his shift. Throughout the day and night, each alarm was sounded by a bell, which called him to duty and to place his life in jeopardy for the good of his fellow man. And when the call had ended and the alarm was completed, it was the bell that rang 3 times to signal the end. And now our brother, Fire Chief Felix Sablan, has completed his task, his duties well done, and the bell rings 3 times, followed by a pause, 3 times, followed by a pause, and 3 times in memory to and in tribute for his life and service.
Thank you. You may be seated now. At this point, I'd like to call on Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muña Barnes and members of the 36th Guam Legislature for the presentation of Resolution 426-36 COR.
Buenos and half a day. Manana Situus. Many of God's blessings to each and every one of you. Welcome to your Guam Congress building. Undankla na Situus Masi for all of you being here this morning. And thank you to the family of Captain Felix Sablan for joining us here. Many traveled here from the mainland to be with us during this presentation to posthumously recognizing the late Captain Felix C. Sablan and his service in the government and his dedication to protecting life throughout his career as a firefighter. Undanklu Nasiduas Masi to my colleagues who are joining me here this morning, Speaker Therese Terlahi and Senator Pito Terlahi. Today, family, friends, our family firefighters, we present resolution number 426-36 COR, introduced by myself and the rest of the senators of the 36th Guam legislature. This is relative to posthumously recognizing the late Felix C. Sablan as the first CHamoru to serve as fire chief of both federal government and the government of Guam, and expressing condolences to his family on his passing on behalf of the people of Guam. Be it resolved by the Committee on Rules of the Iminia 36 na Legislatura ng Guam, whereas the late Felix C. Sablan was born on Guam on June 23, 1948, and is the son of Francisco Santos Sablan, Familian Kaila Zandongat, and Rosa Concepcion Sablan, Familian Eba, from the village of Santa Rita, Sumay, Guam, and his siblings are Antonio Sablan, Martin Sablan, Lourdes Diaz, Frankie Sablan, and Anna Mae Cadahe. And whereas Felix C. Sablan attended George Washington High School on Guam before moving to California, and after graduating from Fairfield High School in California, Felix joined the U.S. Army and served in the Vietnam War, where he was assigned to the 38th Air Defense Artillery Brigade at Camp Red Cloud in South Korea. And whereas after completing his military service, Felix moved back to Guam and was hired to serve as an administrative service officer at Agata Johnston Middle School of the Guam Department of Education. And whereas the late Felix C. Sablan was an avid bowler, and in 1971, he met and fell in love with Josephine Munoz Cruz during a bowling competition, and they were married on February 2nd, 1974 on Guam, and had 2 children, Vicky and Tanya. And whereas in 1976, while pregnant with their 3rd child, Nadine, the late Felix and Josephine moved their family to San Diego, California to start a new life. And whereas the late Felix Sablan Jr. earned a degree in fire science from Miramar College, and on October 22nd, 1979, he began his career in firefighting as a Navy Federal Fire. And during this time, the late Felix and Josephine welcomed 2 additional children, Naomi and Felix Jr. Whereas in 1985, the late Felix and Josephine relocated back to Guam to be closer to their aging parents, and the late Felix continued his firefighting career working at the U.S. Navy Federal Fire Department, where he quickly rose through the ranks as driver operator, training chief, and deputy chief. And whereas in 1990, the late Felix was promoted to the position of fire chief, becoming the first CHamoru to serve in the United States Navy's Consolidated Crash, Structural, and Rescue Divisions. And the late Felix served as fire chief for 10 years before retiring in 2000, culminating 21 years of dedicated service with the federal government, and whereas with an outstanding record of public service in 2002, the late Felix was appointed and confirmed to serve as fire chief of the Guam Fire Department, becoming the first person to hold the fire chief position for both federal and the local government. And whereas in 2004, the late Felix left Guam Fire Department to spend time with his grandchildren, Peter, Paul, Austin, Victoria, Sierra, Kyle, Devin, Matthew, and Justin. In 2005, he relocated to San Diego, California, where he welcomed the second batch of grandchildren, Shania, Gracias, Jared, Felix, Trip, Melrose, and Connor. And whereas in 2007, the late Felix took a part-time role working at the Loss Prevention Division of the United States Navy Exchange at Coronado Islands, and whereas in 2018, on his 70th birthday, the late Felix became a great-grandfather with the birth of Logan James, and over the next 4 years, 3 more great-grandchildren blessed his life, Paisley, Andres, and Lemia. And whereas nothing was more important to Felix than his family, and he passed away expecting his 5th great-grandchild due in October 2022. And he leaves behind his loving wife, 5 children, 14 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren as well. And 6 furry grands. So now, therefore, be it resolved that the Committee on Rules of Iminay 36 na Legislaturan Guahan does hereby, on behalf of a Legislaturan Guahan and the people of Guam, posthumously recognize the late Felix C. Sablan as the first CHamoru to serve as fire chief of both the federal government and the government of Guam, and express condolences to his family and his passing on behalf of the people of Guam. And be it further resolved that the Speaker and the Chairperson of the Committee of Rules certify, and that the Legislative Secretary attest to the adoption whereof, and that copies of the same be thereafter transmitted to the family of the late Felix C. Sablan and to the Honorable Lourdes A. Leon Guerrero, Imagahagan Guahan. Ladies and gentlemen, this was duly and regularly adopted on the 19th day of October 2022. It was signed by our Speaker, Speaker Therese Terlahi, myself as Vice Speaker and Chair on the Committee on Rules, and Senator Amanda Shelton as Legislative Secretary. So at this time, I'd ask that the family please come up and join us as we make the official presentation of the resolution. Children.
Thank you so much to the members of the 36th Guam Legislature. At this point, for the presentation of the governor's certificate and some brief remarks, I'd like to call up the Honorable Lourdes A. Leon Guerrero, Governor of Guam, and the Honorable Joshua F. Tenor, Lieutenant Governor of Guam.
Good morning, and of course, very good morning, and our sincere condolences to the Sablan family, and for making this long trip to visit Naomi and Vicky, I guess, and their family with Auntie Josephine, and to the men in uniform, our firemen from all of the branches here on Guam, the different services. Thank you very much for coming and paying respect to really a trailblazer in the field of fire service on Guam. So let me first start by saying thank you for your sacrifice, because I realize now that the governor and I are really involved and understand what happens with our firemen. I want to thank you for your sacrifice, because over the course of 20 plus years, when Chief Felix was doing his job and protecting the welfare of others, it was a sacrifice that he made with his family. So I'm sure there's a lot of birthdays and trips and injuries at school and all sorts of things that Auntie Josephine had to take care of, because he had made a promise to the people to protect them. So I just want to thank you for all of that time. I have known him. I first met him as a young boy because Vicky was my classmate in middle school at Bishop Baumgartner Junior High School at the time. And of course, Auntie Josephine is from Sinahanya, which is where I'm from, my dad. She knows my Auntie Maggie very well. And so I grew up knowing Vicky very well. And then when I had the privilege to serve as staff to Governor Gutierrez, I got to meet him in a professional way when Governor Gutierrez tapped him to lead the fire department at a very tumultuous time, actually. There's a lot of budget cuts, a lot of stuff that happened, and he'll talk about that. But later, I was able to meet Naomi when I was the administrator of the court, and I hired her to be a school resource officer and to be a probation officer, and she got out of law enforcement, and now she is over at DOA. So she is the one that maintains our benefits for the entire government health insurance. She knows what's going on. But I didn't know that Naomi was part of the family until later when I was asking her, and then a double thing when I found out that her husband is from Sinanya too, part of the Chodi family. Her father-in-law is Mayor Danny Sablan there. He's a very good friend of my parents. So I have a very good social tie. Of course, Uncle Frank and Tibel, I have very personal ties now. And I had a chance to be mentored by his brother Martin when he returned to service, and it was tapped, and Governor, the late Martin Sablani, helped me understand how to deal with emergencies and making sure we got things out. And of course, I worked side by side with the youngest sister, Anime, when we had to go out there and repair a lot of roads back in the day. So I just say that because I know that when Chief Felix left, it was partly because part of his family was in the States. And part of it was he wanted to make sure that his family was enjoying an improved quality of life. And in the end, I'm just grateful that he was able to spend so much time with his family and raising and helping to raise his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren. I can't imagine what a better place to be, even though he's still young and he left us still at a young age. But I'm, of course, forever grateful for his contribution. And now I'd like to pass this on to our governor.
Thank you very much. Hafaday, I'd like to thank the Vice Speaker for organizing, I think, this very great honor and celebration of life of our great friend Felix. I also want to welcome back Josephine and Felix, and of course Naomi and Vicky are here, but it's the two other children that are off island. But I also want to say that in this whole you will see great men and women from the fire department, both from the federal side and from the local side. And these men and women are the ones that protect us day in and day out. These men and women are the ones that respond to the cries of distress and stress and tragedy. And I just want to say thank you for your services. Thank you for your great passion to protect our people. And I want to say that Felix has been very instrumental, I truly believe, in the nurturing of many of our men and women in the fire department services. I know that he has elevated the standards of practice and care within the Guam Fire Department. I also know that he has left legacies and many, many memorable memories of his greatness, his leadership, his passion, his compassion, and of course, his love to protect our people of Guam. I also have a connection to Josephine. It's not just Josh. That's why Josh and I get along. There's a lot of connections with us. But of course, Josh is from Sinahanya. I am also from Sinahanya. And Josephine grew up with my brother, very, very close to my brother Tony. And I know Josephine's family very well. I know her sister Laling very well. Laling worked with me at FHP. Very, very loving family. Very welcoming, very generous family, very warm. And Josephine also was in the sodality. And we used to go to church. It's a women's Catholic organization called Sodality. You probably aren't the Sodality of Mary, but I think we go there only as an excuse to go see our boyfriends at church. I know, a social gathering. But, you know, I say this because I just want to bring a personal humanness about all of our connections. Felix is one of the most warmest, loving guy. I met Felix through my son Joaquin. When Felix was in San Diego going to school, met my son Joaquin and became really good friends. And when my brother Tony passed away, my mom was so depressed. So I said, why don't you go to San Diego and stay with Joaquin for a couple of months? And Felix almost every day will go and serenade my mom to get her happy, to sing CHamoru songs, and to dance. And for that, Felix, you brought some really good times and love to my mom. So I say this because this is the kind of individual that Felix Sablan has created, a family of love and welcoming and generosity. So it is a great pleasure for me and an honor, certainly, to present a certificate in recognition and on behalf of the people of Guam to honor our great man, Felix Sablan. And I'll have Josh read the certificate.
Yes, if I can have Mrs. Sablan and the children come up again, and their spouses, of course. This certificate is posthumously awarded to Felix C. Sablan, born June 23, 1948, and left our world on August 18, 2022, former Chief of the Navy Federal Fire Department and the Guam Fire Department. In recognition of your honorable legacy of service and your historic dedication to protect the people of Guam, this certifies that Felix C. Sablan is hereby honored with distinction as a former Chief of the Navy Federal Fire Department on Guam from 1990 to 2000, and the first person to additionally serve as Chief of the Guam Fire Department from 2002 to 2004. On behalf of the island of Guam, we extend our enduring gratitude for your devotion to service and do further express our utmost and lasting respect to your family and loved ones. Signed on this 20th day of October in the year of our Lord, Anno Domini 2022, Lourdes Leon Guerrero Megahaga, Joshua F. Tenorio Segundo Megatlahi.
Thank you to Governor Leon Guerrero and Lieutenant Governor Tenorio for the certificate and those kind remarks. At this point, I'll call up former Governor Gutierrez for some remarks as well. Governor Gutierrez.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the honor. Leave it to Tina Muña Barnes, our Vice Speaker, to come up with something like this as nobody else can. And she just reaches out to the people and the hearts of the people. And as I was walking in, I didn't realize it was going to be this kind of a big affair. And the attendants from every walk of life here in Guam that are the frontliners, particularly the fire department, firefighters. As I walked up there, I just felt in awe for the kind of people, and it brought back some memories that I got pumped into a situation that nobody would in the civilian life would want to ever get caught in a situation. When that Korean airline crash happened up there, I stood back and I watched the firefighters go in and out of that burning plane and just pulling out bodies, you know, and I said, these are the frontliners, and people sometimes forget that these are the people that make our lives whole here and make us safe here in Guam. And I know that the governor and the lieutenant governor has never forgotten that, and she pushes funds out there to let them know that we have to be able to take care of you, the firefighters. As Felix was there, nunning me to please give us some money so we can upgrade the people that go out there and save lives, the extra corps that can give shots and do all those extra things, right? And we did, and the governor's doing that as well. We need to give you the resources. Felix pushed that on us. I know Felix's family so well. One of them married my sister, Martin. God bless you, Martin. My wife, Jerry's favorite brother-in-law, and mine too. And of course, when Governor, you were talking about Felix singing and lullabying your mother, I didn't realize that he did that. The only one I knew that did that was Frankie. Frankie did that when my brother-in-law was dying, his brother was dying, at Naval Hospital, had every bell, right? Everybody laughing in the intensive care. This family is really someone that you have to try to emulate. Tun Francisco and Tan Rosa brought their children up with the feeling that you've got to work hard, you got to study hard, and you got to be generous, and you got to be kind to people. I remember them, they work from their hands over at the port, selling something, whatever it is, May's Bakery, they're there, and they saw that in action. They saw, your husband saw that in action. That's why you've got a great husband in Felix, and that's why I tapped him immediately to take over the reins of the Guam Fire Department when Chief Gill retired. So I really want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that I was not going to come here today because I had another boxing match at GVB, but I postponed that until, so this is more important. Josephine, I don't know your family so well, except that your brother and I had a fist fight at the Paseo in 1963, Liberation Day. They saw little Carl Gutierrez in the Air Force, Andy Jerry in the booth, and they didn't like that. So they ganged up on me, and I ended up fighting with your brother John. He was in the Navy, I think, at the time. So I know that, but the Kaila Eba clan I know, all the way to your uncle, they're all firefighters, I think, right? Every one of them are in the front line kind of a job, and I know that came from the upbringing of the Eba Kaila clan. So I really am honored when I ran into Felix Jr. at San Diego, came up to me and reintroduced himself, hadn't seen him, and said, we're coming to Guam. I said, for what, boy? He says, Auntie Tina is going to come give us this honor and to give the honor to my dad, and he deserves it. And I really appreciate your reading, and Chief, and it brings it home that frontliners have to have great men in them, and you're all great men. Felix leading it, and we miss you, Felix. And I hope that your life will never be forgotten. I'm sure that I see her cry, I see her laugh. She's reminiscing, and we love your husband, Felix. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Gutierrez. And at this point, for some closing remarks, I'd like to call on Felix Sablan Jr. for some closing remarks.
Buenas and half a day, Torsamta. Motre magos para pa celebrar in occasion para I total. It's going to be a little emotional because when I see everybody in uniform, I cannot disassociate my father in that uniform. So I'm going to do my best. My mom, Josephine Sablan, my sisters Vicky, Tanya, Nadine, Naomi, and I, and our families, thank you for being here today to honor my father, the late Felix C. Sablan. We want to especially thank Vice Speaker Tina Muña Barnes and her team, Shrek, and staff, for really championing this moment, along with the members of the 36th Legislature, Megahaga, Lulian Guerrero, Segunda Megalahi, Josh Tenorio, the Federal Fire Department, the Guam Fire Department, Anderson Fire Department, Airport Fire, the Joint Regions Marianas. Your support and acknowledgement truly means the world to us. Each of the institutions that you represent today gave my father the opportunity to excel and serve our people. For that, we are truly grateful. I'll borrow a saying from a Zen proverb. A windmill's true power is revealed only when it faces the wind. And similarly, a leader's true strength is revealed when they face adversity. My father met adversity as often as red rice meets finadeni. As you can imagine, that's a lot. In fact, he was born with infantile paralysis. Not many people know this. A condition that paralyzed him from the waist down. He'd tell me stories of those first 4 years of his life. He said his elbows and his knees were calloused from low crawling around his home in the village of Santa Rita. He never complained despite everything being exponentially harder on him. Through the help of a local Sorohana and years of therapy, he was able to walk and run, and he didn't stop running. Those formative years instilled in him a kind of determination and zeal for life and for living that influenced his leadership philosophy, parenting, and all the relationships he got to enjoy in his life. While attending college in San Diego, he was inspired by the TV series Emergency. He saw the EMTs and the first responders in action and said, "That's what I want to do." He received his fire science degree and worked 3 jobs until he finally got an opportunity to work for the Federal Fire Department, only to find out that he was disqualified due to having a hernia. He could not do the physical exam required for the job. He was devastated. The chief said, "Get it fixed, and I'll call you when the next opportunity comes." And in that time, opportunities were few and far between. So his gut told him to act. And so he got in the car, went straight up to the Veterans Hospital. He didn't know he had benefits because he was a veteran, to get the surgery done. You could not imagine my mother's voice reacting to when he said, "Asagual, I'm going to surgery right now. I'll be back. A week later, there was an unexpected opening. And with the fresh stitches, he was approved to go through the physical. He said midway through the exercises, he started to bleed through his clothes, and that it took everything in him to get through it. He just about passed out when he was told he was successful. And the rest, they say, is history. My father was an extraordinary man. He taught us to treat people with dignity and respect, regardless of their pedigree or title. I learned a great deal from my father. And I want to share a few of his leadership lessons that he's lived by and given me over the years. 1, take care of those in your charge. He naturally knew that people came with different experiences and that trust is a complex equation that takes time. And that sometimes you have to suffer small doses of uncalled for pain, fall on the sword even, to earn the trust of your people. He'd say, be patient. They'll come around to see that you've always had their back. 2, fight the long fight for your people. Have the courage and the confidence to stand up and go against the grain. He'd say, Tom tom si lasi lo tom tom niya. Lasie's smart, but you're smarter. He encouraged me to have the confidence to carry out what I believed was right. 3, trust your gut and take action. He frequently told me stories of the many times he'd get a gut feeling that the fire marshal will visit unannounced. So he'd take action, and everybody would, what's going on? They're all scurrying to get this. Like it was kind of like all of a sudden, and then sure enough, a couple weeks later, the fire marshal would visit within 3 weeks, and everything would be cherry. 4, never stop being qualified for the position. A leader without followers is just a person taking a walk. My father knew that nothing meaningful and lasting gets accomplished alone, and that a leader should strive to be the type of person that deserved the responsibility given. Before I close, if my father were here today, he would want me to tell and make sure that you all knew the main reason for his success in career and in life. His sweetheart, my mother. He would always say, I could not have achieved anything without your mother. Every bit of my success is equally hers. We truly would not have had a Fire Chief Felix Sablan if he didn't have a Josephine Cruz Sablan. My dad is here, and he would want to share this moment with you. Our hope is that my father's life be a reminder that the central tenets of being a leader starts with treating people with dignity and respect. And that when faced with the winds of adversity, that you take care of the people in your charge. You fight the long fight for them. You take action on what you know to be right, and never stop being qualified for the position you hold. Jesus Masi.
Thank you so much, Felix Sablan Jr., for those remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, that concludes our program for today. The Sablan family has provided some refreshments in the lobby for you to enjoy. And with that being said, if we can just have the family members and the firefighters come, and everybody come to the front for a group picture. And that concludes our presentation for today. Thank you.